Okay, so here we are in our next set of notes. We are in 14.5, ecological succession. Our key concept: ecological succession is a process of change in the species that make up a community. A new vocabulary: we have ecological succession, climax community, primary succession, pioneer species, and secondary succession. Our essential question: how are primary and secondary succession different? So, ecosystems tend to change with time until a stable system is formed. The stable ecosystem that will form depends on climatic limitations. So what's the climate? Okay, if you're in an arid climate or a dry climate like a desert, we're not going to expect to see a lush rainforest grow, right? It's going to depend on the climate. So what ecological succession is the replacement of one community by another until a stable stage is reached. So we call that stable stage, and those steps that take part in this process, ecological succession. All right, so we have two kinds of succession we're going to talk about. We have primary succession, which starts with organisms called pioneer species, and then secondary succession, which start by the species that are remaining. And this will become a little bit more clear to you once we get more into detail about these two types. So the climate of the region affects the ecosystems that will occur. The final stage of succession is called a climax community, and it's dependent on the climate of the area. And we talked about that. That is the climax community. So we build and we build and we build and we build. So we hit that top peak, the climax community. So primary succession occurs where there was nothing before, just bare rock. So there was no previous community, bare rock, bare sand, and it actually has to start with these things called pioneer organisms. Okay, just like pioneers went and settled the West in the U.S., they were the first people out there. Same thing with our organisms. They're pioneers. They're taking on this feat of settling in this new area. And it takes an extremely long time to happen, like thousands and thousands of years. Okay, so what exactly are pioneer organisms? Well, I told you they're the first organisms to appear in a new area. Just like pioneers settled the West, like our country, these pioneers that first appear where there were nothing before. And they can tolerate extreme conditions, extreme hot, extreme cold, extreme dry, extreme wet. Examples include moss, dunes, grass, and lichens. Lichens are that it's kind of like a green kind of flaky material that grows on the sides of trees or the sides of rocks. Okay, and then in aquatic ecosystems, the pioneer species can actually be algae. And again, this is on bare rock or bare sand. There's no soil there. So the lichens actually produce a weak acid that eats away at the rock and then breaks it down into soil. So this can take a really, really, really long time. They don't need the soil to survive. And again, they can survive extreme drought, extreme heat, other harsh conditions. And they're actually super important because they start the soil building process. And it's just a really interesting, the lichens actually are a type of algae and fungus growing together, and they live in a mutualistic type of relationship. And that's the things that we talked about last week. All right, so our stages of primary succession. First stage, we got our pioneer species. And again, they're going to build the soil for us. This is no soil, bare rock, or sand. I can't express that enough. That primary succession happens where there's nothing before. Second stage, we get grasses and weeds. We get bushes and shrubs then in our third stage. Fourth stage, we get some small trees, and depending on the ecosystem, they can become established. And then finally, we get our climax community and our last species to appear. Now, some scientists say we're still changing over time, and this is going to evolve into a different type of ecosystem over a long period of time. But again, we're going to call it a done ecosystem at this point. Okay. Secondary succession happens where soil is always present. Okay. So if you can remember secondary for soil, because there's going to be soil. Secondary succession happens when a community is disrupted and it has to start again. So something like a forest fire, a hurricane, deforesting the area, floods. Full succession for this can take a very long time, like hundreds of years, not thousands of years like primary succession. The most important takeaway is that soil is already present here. Okay, so it doesn't have to build the soil. We don't need these pioneer species coming in to start the soil making process. It's just something catastrophic happened where the organisms need to resettle that area. So this would be like in secondary succession, where we've gone through, the farmer's gone through and plowed this field, there's nothing there. And then just in a couple of years, we get these nice grasses and flowers and things growing because we had nice fertile soil there. If we look at this picture, this is going to, I would like you to take a look at this question and tell me, is this going to be primary or secondary succession first off? So in your head, think about that. And then go ahead and put those pictures in order from when it would start to when it would be finished. Okay, for this one, there is absolutely no soil, no nothing there before. It's just sand, so we should say that it's primary succession. Okay, from there, we are going to move into the order in which this happens. The order should be B, then going to C, then going to A, and then finally to D, which would be our climax community. All right, guys, if you have any questions, please let me know.